Okay, so here we are with our episode 2 of the Bay Area Sports Podcast. I'm Steve Rubin, and I'm here today with our basketball expert, Kyle Bossier, the assistant basketball coach at UC Santa Cruz, good friend of mine, big Warrior fan. And we're going to be doing today is a Warriors focus. So this entire podcast is going to be all about the Warriors. You know, we're going to compare them to the 95-96 Chicago Bulls and just kind of talk back and forth, banter about the Warriors. So let's get right at it.
Okay, first of all, I'm pumped to be here. Loved the first episode. So honored to be the first guest on the podcast, I believe. So
Thank you for
obviously
coming.
must have something interesting to say, I guess. So I'm excited about to rap about the Warriors, talk hoops, and break this thing down.
Yeah, I mean, this is like the best. We wouldn't be having a podcast 10 years ago about the Warriors. Not because of technology,
Well,
just based off of what they were like 10 years ago.
Well, if we did it, we would have been bitching the whole entire time. It would have been
the most negative podcast of all
literally,
time.
who would have tuned in to our podcast to hear us just complain about Vontigo coming?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, complain
Can't
about.
believe we just traded for Mookie Blaylock. Why did we do that?
Or even like we were just talking about earlier today when Bogut was traded. I mean, when we got Bogut for Monte Ellis, I remember just being so jaded by everything that we've done. I was like, oh my God, this is clearly going to be a guy that
Monte, we're idiots,
and he's never going to play for us. Like, he's just a big name, and you know, now it's a total paradigm shift of thinking when it comes to the Warriors.
Right, started from the bottom, now we're here.
No, and like every single thing they do, now you trust them. It's kind of insane.
Oh, don't even question it. Sign Varejao, greatest signing ever.
Oh my God! And by the way, we did just sign Varejao. The first episode, I talked about us possibly signing David Lee, but we ended up signing Varejao, and I love that signing. I know I probably love it more than I should, but he is exactly what we needed at this time. With Festus hurt, and Festus just being an injury liability, having essentially like a poor man's Bogut off the bench is huge. Right. You know, like the fact that he's going to come off the bench, he's going to get rebounds. He's not an offensive-minded center, which Jason Thompson was, even though he wasn't good at offense. He always tried to ISO and just back people down.
Well, Jason wasn't really good at anything, but we're definitely noticing, being, first of all, Giants fans and their success, and now with the Warriors, when you have a good team like this, you get little gimmies like this. All of a sudden, people want to play for you. They want to play with Steph Curry. You know, we're not the only team that wanted Anderson Varejao. Yeah. And he took a pay cut to be a part of what we're doing. So
they chose.
You know, that's something down the road that we can be excited about. That, hey, we're going to get some hometown discounts here. People want to play with this team, so it's kind of cool.
And he chose us over the Spurs.
Exactly.
Like who would have ever thought that would happen? I mean, like, that's insane to me. It really is to think that any basketball player in the world would choose the Warriors over the Spurs is crazy, but now it's not. It absolutely is not.
Yeah, I mean, and we were talking about 10 years ago. We had to throw all sorts of money at, we basically begging players to play for us. Hey, Derek Fisher, here's $10 million.
Corey Maggette,
$50 million. Like,
or people that we re-signed, like
they're coming on a discount.
Yeah, now we're getting discounted guys when we had to give, gigantic contracts just to keep players like Adonal Foyle.
Oh, God.
Or Eric Dampier. I mean, it's just this is an awesome time being 55-5. We're 50 games over 500. I mean, it's just insane to think.
We're winning games. The whole world's talking about us. TV, radio. When you go out in public, they're talking about the Warriors. And I don't know. I'm just having a hard time with what people are saying because it's obvious people aren't watching the games. And it's so crazy to me. People are talking about Steph Curry. And people love to overanalyze everything. Is he good? Is he not good? How did he stand the test of time? Hold up, people. Stephen Curry is having the best year of any basketball player to ever play the game. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
How the game is basketball, as in you want to put the ball in the basket. Mm-hmm. He's doing that at 30 points a game, playing 30 minutes a game.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me?
That's insane.
Well, he doesn't play one-on-one defense. Doesn't play one-on-one defense. He puts the ball in the basket. That's the point of the game. And he's doing it at a level that we've never seen before.
And he's not a complete liability on defense either. He's not like Jamal Crawford or someone that just literally plays offense and this does not play defense. I mean, he's not a wizard on defense, but at least he can quasi hold his own, don't you think? What do you think about his defense?
Well, it's one of those things where, the whole game has changed and people have not adapted to it. And when you hear guys like Oscar Robertson talk about whatever, or people who played in the 90s talk about whatever, look, that was an isolation game. You had to play man-to-man defense. Most teams just kind of went one-on-one, and you had to be able to guard your guy. Now, every single team, every possession is running pick and roll. You hardly ever guard your guy one-on-one anymore.
Yeah.
You have to get over or under screens. You have to play positional defense now. So Curry is a very good positional defender. He knows how to get in the right spots. He knows where to be on the floor relative to his teammates. Yeah, he wouldn't have stood up in the 90s or the 80s, but the game's changed. Yeah. And he's actually at least average in what they do now.
With all these picks and all this stuff, is that what's changing when it comes to the old school centers? Is that why there's no slow... Like, Bogut's one of the last true centers that's successful, but it's because he can play it top and he can pass it, and he can do so much when it comes to that. Like, what do you think about that?
And people get really confused about that with the big guys because they either grew up watching the 80s basketball or they grew up watching the 90s basketball. What ended up happening is the Europeans realized, look, if you have a dominant center, what if he has to guard a three-point shooter on the other side? That means now your dominant center has to play away from the rim. And while my guy, Channing Frye, whatever, is making threes, your guy is trying to score twos on the block. And I'm going to make more and score more with my threes than you are with your twos.
Yeah.
So that was the first thing that the Europeans figured out. The second thing is these kids don't want to play on the low block anymore. They don't want to do it.
Yep.
And you had guys like Kevin Garnett come in '96. You had guys like, obviously, Kevin Durant doing their thing. Mm-hmm. That's how players want to play now. No one wants to take the physical contact of being on the block. So you're not seeing guys come up. Like Jahlil Okafor, who's a low block player. Mm-hmm. That's like the only guy that's come through in the last 5 years who has that skill set. Even him, when he has to go guard someone like Channing Frye, Channing Frye is shooting threes. Jahlil Okafor is not going to make up for that on the low block.
That's true. I mean, isn't it kind of funny to think about, what is that, maybe the 2006, 2007 draft when it was Oden or Durant. Like, that was the decision 1 and 2.
Right.
That is the polar opposites of basketball. That is, like, literally the changing of the guard of, like, how basketball is played is Kevin Durant and Oden. Oden is your old school.
Oden's the
best
old
case
school.
scenario. Like, if he's healthy, Shaquille O'Neal going to just get the ball down the middle, ISO, back the guy down, dunk it in his face sort of thing. Like,
right.
That's what they were hoping for. And obviously, we know the story about him getting injured. But Durant is this 7-foot player that plays like a guard. Like, the guy can guard Stephen Curry, yet he's big enough to hold his own with the taller players.
So he's a guy you can play at the shooting guard, swing him to a small ball four, whatever else. So what you have now is the guy you have to have a defensive guy or as a center who can defend the rim, and the Warriors certainly have that in Bogut. Or you need a guy who can go get extra offensive rebounds when these three-point shots go up. And it's almost like a shoot threes and go get it offense. Mm-hmm. That's really kind of what the NBA's become. And right now on the TV we're watching a guy like Tristan Thompson. He's so invaluable in today's game. Yeah, he can't stretch out and hit the threes, but when Kyrie puts up, a long shot, he can go get those offensive rebounds, and that's really valuable. So that's what you're looking for from your big guys now. Active, energy, protect the rim, rebound, those kind of things. Not so much a low block player anymore.
So we'll talk about him later on. So what you're saying is Dennis Rodman would have ruled this time.
Dennis Rodman, it would have been his heyday. He would have been the ultimate, yeah.
He just would have. This would have been everything you would have asked for with his rebounds and his intensity out there. I mean, we're gonna go into the Bulls in about a couple minutes here, but just in general, it sounds like he would have just been.
Yeah,
perfect.
So someone like Rodman would really. I mean, he fit in that era as well, and he'd fit in this one too. Particularly because when you set a pick and roll, you can switch with Rodman. Like a lot of players on the Warriors, Rodman can guard Chris Paul or he can guard Blake Griffin. He has that versatility.
Yeah.
And so in today's game, I mean, he would be outstanding.
Yeah.
And he played in even two different eras in the 80s and into the late 90s, and he would be successful as well today.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, speaking of Dennis Rodman, we'll just get right into it. I mean, the comparisons, you hear it all the time. Like, Bulls the Warriors are compared to the 95-96 Bulls, who won 72, lost 10, which is the best record of all time. The Warriors would have to go 18-4 to beat that mark, which with their 55-5, that doesn't sound like something that's crazy at all.
No.
I mean, they have some tough games. Like, I think they do play the Spurs 3 more times, but I mean, to 18-4, I mean, that seems very doable. I mean, what do you think? And a lot of those games are at home. I think they have, 3/4 of the games left are at home.
Yeah, without a doubt. And this is a super fun argument, and I'm really excited for this debate. I've been kind of chewing on it in my mind the last week. But, both teams have one thing in common, is they're not going to mail in games. And every game matters to these guys. And they're literally trying to win every single time out, which can't be said for every team that we've watched. And just as an example, in recent history, the We Believe team with Baron Davis, some nights they were great. Mm-hmm. Other nights, you could tell they were out partying or whatever, and they were mailing it in. But that's what's so special about this team and the Bulls team.
The competitive drive in both of
Absolutely.
those teams is unreal, and it's unprecedented, and there's no coincidence why they are so successful. Obviously, they have a ton of talent, both of them. But the Warriors, for example, the other day when they were down at halftime, maybe 9 or 10, Draymond Green lost it in the locker room. This is a regular season game. This is not playoffs. But it felt like the playoffs because of his intensity and the atmosphere that the entire arena had. And it was an amazing game. One of the best regular season games I've ever watched, personally. I think we talked about this.
I agree. One of the best games ever. And to your point, good teams would have lost that game and they would have been fine. Great teams found a way to win, and that's why these teams are two great teams.
Exactly. So let's get into it. I mean,
okay.
First off, we're not going to do position by position because it's
it doesn't
different.
really fit that way. But
so I mean, let's start it off. Let's go to the most obvious one: Michael Jordan and Stephen Curry. I mean, we'll just do it based off this year. Obviously, Curry has a lot to go to be even in the same realm as Michael Jordan. Let's just talk about this.
Well, I actually don't agree with that at all, Steve, and I think he is on a Michael Jordan level, and I think we got to appreciate that. Like I said earlier, the game is to put the ball in the basket, and he's hitting 10, 11, 12 threes in a game. Are you kidding me?
It's insane.
Yeah, it doesn't look like the way Jordan did it, but it's a whole new way of doing it. It's unique, and he's scoring points. What more do you want? And I think he is at a Jordan level right now. I really do.
And we pulled up the stats, and so right this second, 55-5, and then the entire year, Jordan and Curry's numbers are astonishingly close. They both averaged 30 points a game, where Jordan averaged 6 rebounds, 4 assists, so 6 and 4. Curry had 30 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists. I mean, that is astonishingly close. I mean, it's just insane that these two guys, those are two guys that are, if you go anywhere, you're going to see their face right now. I mean, back in the day, Michael Jordan was everywhere. He was on a TV screen. He was on a billboard. He was, Wheaties, Gatorade, Nike, even like some type of battery, like had him even.
Right.
I mean, it's insane. And Curry's getting to that level.
Oh, you can't go a day without seeing Stephen Curry's face.
Yeah, I mean, he's Under Armour. Even like Muscle Milk.
Yeah,
I mean,
he's
it's
everywhere.
Just starting with him too. That's the crazy thing.
I think I've seen and talked about Steph Curry every single day this year.
Yeah, and that's an amazing year for you. I mean, I'm the same way. I talk about it every single day. But Stephen Curry, I said in the first podcast, he's a type of player you just can't take for granted.
No.
Especially with his ankle issues, which hopefully is not a thing in the future. But if he just keeps going like he's going, the trajectory that he has, I mean, this is maybe one of the best players of all time.
He's having one of the best seasons of all time, if not the best.
You're thinking, it's crazy to think that he could be back-to-back MVPs, yet maybe the most improved player of the year.
He should win most improved player.
Which is insane. That should never happen. And, he won't get voted just because that's just not how people think. But really, he is one of the most improved. Yeah, he went from...
He is.
1A to even more 1A, but it's just it's crazy to think how much he's improved in this past year.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny watching his training, what he does in the summer, and I've actually looked into it a lot, and he's really doing what the next obvious progression is for training athletes, and that is training the mind. And it's really an untapped thing that people haven't really gotten into. In recent years, Tom Brady has really taken it to another level. I'm not sure if Curry got anything from him, but I know he spends a lot of time training his nervous system, his ability to process information, his ability to react quickly. And that's really the next level for a lot of players to go to. In the last 5 years or so, there's been huge advancements in injury prevention. There's all sorts of information and resources to really, get your body in unbelievable shape. Curry did that with his ankles. He fixed that, and he's been in great condition and avoided missing too many games. But now the next thing moving forward is training the mind and the brain, and he's at the forefront of that. And I think a lot of players are going to follow in that mold once they kind of realize what he's doing.
Yeah, and like when you're training the mind, I don't know if this is really anything to do with what you're saying, but that guy is cold-blooded. That guy is never scared of the moment, and maybe that is what you were saying, but like the game last Saturday against the Thunder, like he didn't even think, and he shot a 38-foot three and
right, exactly. So with the mind, it's training first of all your confidence, your ability to be in the moment and play in the moment, but also your ability to have body control, to play relaxed, to have proprioception, awareness of where you are on the court. And he is off the charts on all of those things as an athlete. And that's why he's so good at all those sports, golf, bowling, whatever, because he's naturally coordinated. His body is balanced and moves well.
I mean, this is amazing. I mean, Curry, maybe in 5-10 years we'll be saying, talking to him like Michael Jordan, where like he's everywhere, and you compare everyone to Curry. So I mean that might be where
that's where we're headed.
So. Obviously, Curry, Jordan, they're the leaders of the team. They're the face of the team. They're the face of the NBA at both of their times. Then you have their sidekick.
Okay.
Jordan had Pippen, Scottie Pippen,
right.
And Curry has Thompson. They're very similar in that if they're on other teams, let's say like the Magic, they'd both be, maybe not Magic at that time, but if they're like current time, if Thompson was on the Magic, he'd be a star.
Oh, I mean, Thompson went out on the USA basketball team, and he was one of the best players in the whole world. I mean, the way he was playing defense, shooting on the USA
he's
team. He's
arguably, people say, top 5 player. I don't think he's quite yet there at the top 5 because the game a couple days ago against the Hawks kind of showed he struggled when it was all on his shoulders. And maybe he's just not used to it. Maybe it's just like he's so used to Curry being there, and maybe Curry opens up the floor more and he doesn't get double teamed as much. When Curry's on the floor. But I don't know, he kind of struggled. He was like 6 for 24 from the field. I mean, that was his time to shine. And obviously he scored like almost 30 points, but
yeah, and
it's hard to judge it all off one game. But it was definitely a game where I was anticipating for him to completely take it over.
Well, he is what he is, and he does so many things so well. But he's not a guy who can create his own shot at an elite level. He's not a guy that can create opportunities for other people at an elite level. He's not a guy that's going to, really ignite offense. But what he is a guy who's going to score 20-plus points a game no matter what team he's on.
Yeah.
He's going to play great defense, both pick and roll and on the ball. And he's going to be, a good personality, a good teammate. So.
And things they have in common is they're both good at defense. Obviously, Pippen was one of the best defensively when he played. He was all defensive NBA whenever he played. But Thompson's very good at his position.
Thompson's really good at his position.
And he has great length as well.
He tries. He plays
hard. 6'7" shooting guard.
Who's guarding Chris Paul.
Exactly.
Who's guarding, all these guys.
Yeah, some of those guys that maybe Curry, they don't want to put that on him. Curry will take over for that. Thompson will take over that role of guarding their best point guard.
So when you talk about a Batman and Robin, Pippen, Jordan, perfect match.
Yeah.
Same with Thompson and Curry.
But on those teams, those were the best players, but they weren't maybe necessarily the heartbeat of the team. And that's who we're going to talk about next.
Okay.
2 of my favorite players to ever play in the NBA are both of these guys, Dennis Rodman and Draymond Green.
Well, first of all, could you imagine them playing head-to-head?
Oh, my God.
Could you even comprehend the battle that would be? We're talking about...
I'm weirdly getting like chills just thinking about it.
Rodman Malone, I believe, ended up in a ring, if I'm not mistaken. Didn't they have a WWE match or something?
Yeah, something weird like that.
And that's with Malone, who's kind of bland by NBA standards. Draymond and Rodman? Are you kidding me?
That would have been the most epic. They're both undersized, but they want it more than anybody else on that court. They want to get that ball, and they want to help their teammates. They're very unique in that they're hated by other teams. Like
Not to mention that they both have a screw loose.
They have a screw loose.
Loony.
I think. I mean, Rodman had a lot more screws loose than
Correct.
Draymond. I think Draymond just on the court is so passionate,
Right.
but so is Rodman. Like his highlights are some of the best things that I've ever watched.
Without a doubt.
Like he is just diving and going after every ball. He wants it so bad. I mean, he averaged 14 rebounds in that year. I mean, that's insane. Averaging 14 rebounds is what, maybe a 6'6", maybe 6'8". I don't know.
They both share that selfless. They let Jordan, Pippen, Kukoc do their thing, and then Draymond, highlights and lets the other guys do their thing. Now Draymond's a little more versatile than Rodman.
He's more of a passer,
especially with the shooting ability. Obviously, the passing. People don't really realize, and this is one of the other things. Are you guys watching the games? Draymond plays point guard.
Yep.
News alert.
I know.
ESPN. Draymond Green is like a point center.
Isn't that kind of Magic Johnson-esque?
It's like Magic Johnson. And no one's talking about this. No one on ESPN, whatever. But, when most teams where the 5-man's going to come set a screen and roll for the point guard, on the Warriors, Stephen Curry is setting a high pick and roll for Draymond Green. If you're a defensive coach, how the hell are you going to guard that? If you help and sag off Curry, what do you think Curry's going to do? Pop for a 3.
Exactly.
If you go up and hedge it or whatever, you're leaving Curry all alone for a shot. And you're seeing teams get completely, they have no idea what to do. Draymond turns the corner and gets dunks and layups.
Well, that's what you saw against the Cavaliers.
The NBA doesn't know what to do.
That's what you saw against the Cavaliers last NBA Finals. I mean, they were down 2-1, the Warriors, and, in my mind, I'm like, something big needs to happen in order for us to win the series. Whatever we were doing, it just wasn't working, and that's when we went true small ball.
Right.
With what they call like the death lineup.
Yeah.
With Iggy out there and Barnes out there and obviously Clay and Curry and Draymond. I mean, it's just the tallest guy on the court is Draymond and maybe Clay. Clay is 6'7".
Right, but the collective length when you add them all up.
Is, and then they could switch easily, like you were saying, with the new NBA, you're constantly switching defensively. They can guard 1 to 5, each and every one of them, while the other side can't. So Timothy Mozgov was killing us in that series, and then suddenly he became irrelevant.
And that's the exact versatility of what the Warriors bring.
I mean, that's the crazy thing with nowadays, being small with the small ball is fine. That's what makes with Dennis Rodman being, I think he was 6'7", maybe 6'8", being that small during that heyday of like big centers like Patrick Ewing and all those guys, Alonzo Mourning and like you even said Karl Malone, that's what makes it even more impressive than getting 30. He had games where he had 30 rebounds.
Right.
Like that's insane to think about.
Right.
So I mean those are both the heart and soul of those teams, and like I love Draymond Green, and he's a guy like Rodman. Like I was about to say earlier, is the other teams. Fans hate their guts.
Hate Draymond.
They hate Draymond. But if that's your guy, you love him. Kind of similar to what it's probably like as Seahawk fans with Richard Sherman. I hate him. I absolutely hate that guy. But
I don't want to go on the record my actual feelings about Richard
Don't
Sherman.
do it, because it is on record right now. But I'm sure if I was a Seahawk fan, which I would never, obviously, I would probably love him. I mean, but it's very similar.
As a 49er fan, I love Sherman, but I'm not going down that road.
Let's get out of there.
But anyways,
you're making me angry.
I'm listening to the ESPN radio, and I think it was Colin Cowherd show, and this guy calls in from New York, and he goes, "Hey, I just wanted to call in. I know Steph Curry's great and all, but man, I'm just not a Steph Curry fan. He just grinds me. He just really, all the shimmies and the dancing. Just play the game. I mean, I just can't take it." And when he hung up, I was like, do you realize you're that guy? Don't be that guy.
Yeah.
Like, come on, dude.
They're having fun.
Are you serious? He does a little shimmy and you're annoyed? Come on. Don't be that guy.
It reminds me of how people act with Cam Newton.
Exactly.
But Cam Newton is a very sore loser, so it makes him look horrible.
Right.
Curry is a professional day in, day out.
Day in, day out.
And all he does is have fun when he does amazing things. Like, come on. Like, it's insane to get angry about that. But a lot of people are just they're haters.
Yeah,
people are
take
haters.
the first train out of Negative Town.
Yeah.
You stay there too long, you're going to be mayor. Don't be that guy.
Yeah,
Curry's great. Give him the love.
I remember hearing once that he actually went. So he's a big Carolina Panther fan, as we all know.
Right.
He went to a Carolina practice, and he saw how much fun they were having and not taking things so seriously. You know, they were obviously working really hard. Like Cam Newton was working out really hard, but they were having fun while doing it. And he said after he saw that, it changed how he thought about the game of basketball. And he then brought that to the Warriors. And obviously it's given us a little bit more, tiny bit more success than them because they were so close to winning it, but they didn't. But it just shows like a winning team, as like I said in episode 1, is about chemistry, and they have the chemistry, and having fun leads to chemistry, obviously. I mean, it's kind of interesting to think about that he took that from the Carolina Panthers.
It is, and he is a coach who is on that wavelength as well. You know, Steve Kerr talks a lot about managing your stress, that, you know, content, peaceful players, maybe from the Phil Jackson experience, are better players. And so they've definitely embraced that.
I mean, we could cut right into it. So we've done 3 of the players. Let's cut, since we're right there, Phil Jackson, Steve Kerr. The similarities between them.
Well, it's hard to tell how many there are. Obviously, Kerr is highly influenced, and obviously Kerr, you know, is the link between the two teams here, playing on the Bulls. But it's obvious he's been more heavily influenced by Mike D'Antoni, at least from an X&O standpoint.
Yeah.
You know, not a lot of people talk about it, but they're running D'Antoni's system. And what Steve Nash was doing, if we thought that was impressive, the Warriors have taken it to a whole nother level. And that's something that doesn't get a lot of attention. But philosophically, you know, I'm not in the locker room, but maybe Phil Jackson has more of an impact there. I guess I wouldn't know.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so the run and gun, is that technically the term of what the Warriors run? Like, what do they call it? Is that Don Nelson time? What is the
Don
technical...
Nelson was more run and gun. Run and gun kind of insinuates that you're taking the first available shot, whereas, you know, the Warriors are taking great shots.
Is there a name for this yet? Or you just called the D'Antoni offense?
It's the 7 seconds or less.
Okay,
you know,
so
it's the same deal.
So they might be very differently philosophically, the triangle in this D'Antoni offense, but they're both revolutionary. When you say that, for their time.
Okay, well,
because now the triangle, so many people have a book on it. So who's running the triangle right now? Is it?
You know, there's a few
Knicks?
teams running the triangle. The Knicks, obviously, with Kurt Rambis, he's pretty committed to it. You know, Tom Thibodeau is a big triangle guy. No one ever talks about that. And I believe Brian Shaw was trying to run it. Obviously, he's out as Nuggets coach, but he was doing it for a little bit. Mm-hmm. I think he gave up on it. But, you know, when you talk about the X and O's offensively, whether it's the triangle or what the Warriors do, it's really, there's a lot of similarities in it. And the similarities are that everyone on the floor can shoot, pass, and dribble. Mm-hmm. It sounds like an obvious thing, but it's very hard to get 5 players who can do all those things. And both the Bulls and the Warriors have that. And from there, you know, it becomes more about the Jimmies and Joes and the X and O's because they're so much more versatile because everyone can do everything. And the other thing that D'Antoni deal does with triangle is anybody can fill any spot. So now, instead of running a script or a pattern where you're just stuck in a certain, you know, area to play, any player can go to any spot. So all of a sudden, the options that you have that the defense has to prepare for becomes infinite, because hey, Jordan can fill the low post just like Luke Longley could. You know, on the pinch post action on the weak side, that could be Scottie Pippen or Lamar Odom, just like it could be Steve Kerr. You know, so it's really versatile, having players who can do a lot of different things and allowing them to go to different spots.
So the similar versatility on both of those, right. What the Warriors are running and the triangles, versatility all the way around from top to bottom of your roster. Right. And obviously, if you have the better the roster, the better the system is going to be implemented, because you can put a great, you know, implementation of the triangle, but if you have a shitty team like the Knicks do right now, it's just not going to be successful. You have no chance.
Right.
So, it's interesting to see the similarities between the two offenses of what they're running right now. I think it's kind of cool to look back at. let's go back into the players.
Okay.
So this one's more obvious, and you don't even need to go down to the statistical part of it. But Luke Longley, that's not even an Australian national, from Down Under, and Andrew Bogut from Down Under.
The dingo ate my baby.
You got two centers from Australia. Yeah,
where did that even come from?
I think it's from a movie or something.
From Seinfeld only?
I don't know, but it's weird all around. But
there's probably some 40-year-olds listening to this who know where that's from. But
and they're yelling at this podcast.
We're a little too young for that.
Yeah. So I mean, just how crazy is that? I mean, it's just like, how many Australian centers have there been in the NBA?
All right, quick rundown of the history of Australian basketball. So we had Luke Longley was probably the first.
One of the first,
he could have been an influential deal. From there, you got Bogut, you've got Dellavedova, you've got Dante Exum.
You have Ingles.
You got Joe Ingles, a quietly underrated player.
You got the backup at Spurs. Help me.
Oh, Aaron Baines, who's now in Detroit.
No. Also the point guard. Come on, we talked about him earlier today.
Oh yeah, Patty Mills.
Patty Mills, duh. So I mean, all those guys are actually going to be on this Australian national team.
Oh, they're so fun to watch.
Even Bogut's playing, which is crazy.
That'll be fun.
And then Simmons, hopefully.
And then Simmons.
So I mean, it's definitely.
Go Aussie. Oi,
this is the best time, obviously, for
great time to be an Aussie.
But Longley is their.
He's the OG. He's the original.
He's the OG Australian. I mean, it's just kind of funny to think the similarities there even go to,
It's also just funny to think back to that era. Every team had their their what's the right word? The honorary white guy stiff. From Greg Ostertag to Luke Longley, and it seemed like the Bulls had the best stiff white guy in the league. And he wasn't exceptional in an area, but he was big.
Yeah,
protect the rim, and that's what you needed.
And exactly. They had it. And they didn't need much. They really just needed, honestly, a big body. But he was a good big body. Not great. Bogut probably in his prime is better, but Bogut's gone through so many injuries with the ankle.
It's kind of hard to tell how his career would have gone without the injuries.
He had some really freak injuries with the elbow as well, where he lands on his elbow and shatters it. I mean, and he was the #1 pick overall. Don't forget that. I mean, he at one point was what people thought was going to be, the next big thing in basketball. But knowing him now, he's not necessarily offensive. He's not offensive minded at all, and that's just not where his strengths are. His strengths are passing and playing defense. And he can rebound because he's big, but he's not necessarily like has a knack for rebound. He just rebounds very normally. But defense and passing and are his main traits, I think, that are the best. Don't you think?
Yeah, I think he's underrated. I think he doesn't get any credit. He holds down defensively, protects the rim. He's probably the best passing big man of our time, of our era, and I don't even think that's arguable. I mean, Blake Griffin is pretty stellar, Joe Noah, but Bogut, I mean, he's really... You see him throw that ball between the legs, and just, oh my God, he's unbelievable.
He
knows his role. He knows he doesn't need to shoot, and he doesn't, and he gets other guys involved. Probably the best screen setter in the NBA, which doesn't get talked about. And second to that would be Draymond Green, no doubt.
Yeah.
They just set some unbelievable screens. They know when to slip early. They know when to set a solid one. They know when to flip it at the right time. And a lot of the times Curry gets open is because those guys set great screens.
Yeah. And I mean, that is truly the success of the Warriors is our screens.
It's exceptional.
It's because if Curry does even have 1 second of free space, he is shooting that three and it's going in. Same with Clay. They have the quickest 3-point shots or just shots in the NBA and maybe ever.
I think it's scientifically proven. I think the sports science guys proved it.
Yeah.
Quickest ever.
It's crazy. I mean, maybe Phil Jackson would beg to differ because he thinks like Curry's similar to, do you hear that? Sharif Abdul-Rahab or something?
What's Phil Jackson's drug history?
He's losing it.
Starting to lose it. What is he talking about over there?
I don't know.
The other day he tweeted something just like, what
I find myself
talking about?
I find myself getting angry at these things, and I need to just not. I usually use Twitter as something just to look at stuff. I found myself commenting at Cedric Ceballos. I'm communicating with Cedric Sabalos, the 90s basketball player.
Right. Why?
Because he said
Why?
that he thought that like the 92-93 Suns team would beat this Warriors team. But it's just like, that's so...
Cedric. Stop it,
It's
Cedric.
beyond insane. The only thing more insane is Steven Jackson saying...
I was watching that live.
That the We Believe team would beat him.
Because they have more heart.
We're Warrior fans. You're telling us that team would beat this team? We've watched all your games, Steven Jackson. I know what type of team you guys were. You were very good, and you like we had talked about earlier, you had times where you could play amazing, and Baron Davis is still one of my favorite like sports players ever.
Oh,
I love Baron Davis.
We said the same
but
time.
there's no way that team would have won.
Well, here's how I break it down. When you're a little bit crazy, but you know you're crazy, like Draymond Green, okay. What gets scary is when you're crazy, but you don't know that you're crazy.
Like
Steven Jackson fits that category to a T.
Yeah.
This guy fired off a gun in like a strip club or something. Steven, we watched you play for 3 years.
We watched you
You're
go
a
to the
mess.
stands and
You're
fight
a
people
mess.
with Ron Artest.
But in his mind, he's just this solid, high character stand-up player. It's like, Steven!
No, I mean, it just, the rebuttals I have to all this is, dude, you couldn't beat the Utah Jazz led by Karolinko and Mehmet Okur and Boozer. How the hell are you going to beat these Warriors? Like, come on, dude.
Heart.
It's just,
I do think it'd be a hell of a game, though. There's
I think they would win, maybe. It wouldn't be a sweep.
I don't think it would be a sweep.
But Baron Davis reminds me of Chris Paul.
Sure.
Just the way they're
Physical.
bulldogs. They're like, that guy wants to win so bad.
Well, Baron wanted to win half the time. But.
That's true. But the half the time he did want to win was amazing. And it was just, I think the similarities between the two, but I digress. Let's go back to this. So
Okay,
I'm going to do one more. Let's just do one more comparison.
Okay,
Sixth man. So we didn't even talk about this one yet. Kukoc and Iguodala. They're both the sixth man. What do you say?
Yeah.
I know you want to compare them to Barnes because those are more
I don't really
similar.
like lining up player to player or whatever, but, Kukoc...
First guy off the bench. Leader of the second team. How about that?
Kukoc is kind of not getting forgotten. He is getting forgotten in the test of time, and he was a guy who'd come in, and he could run your offense. I talked earlier about how Klay Thompson is great, but he doesn't necessarily create open shots for himself. He's not going to play make for other guys. Kukoc is the opposite. Kukoc could score. He was 6'10". He could create space. He could shoot over the top. He could drive around you, and he could pass. So you could put Kukoc in with Jordan out, and he could run the team offensively. And, Iggy or Barnes, certainly not on that level. And Kukoc was a key piece to this team. Very underrated.
I mean, Kukoc was a guy that they not met Kukoc, but played against Kukoc for the first time in the Dream Team. They played against him, and he was one of their toughest competitors. And after that, both Jordan and Pippen went and said, we want this guy on our team.
Right.
And so they got him. And obviously he was, like you even said, he's an unsung guy. Like, no one brings up Kukoc. I think back in the day he was big.
At the time he
was
a
big
big
back
player,
in the
but
day.
Here we are 20 years later.
Yeah, I mean, a high school kid would have no idea who Tony Kukoc was.
I really wonder if they would know who Tony Kukoc is.
I
would hope they would.
I don't know any high school kids, so that's probably a good thing. But yeah, I mean, if I asked them, do you know Tony Kukoc? I don't think they would know. But I don't know. Who knows?
I remember asking a high school kid if he knew who Bob Dylan was, and he did not. So that was a little discouraging. But
well, it obviously depends on which which high school kid you're talking to.
I just don't want to talk to high school kids in general.
Exactly. It's probably not a good podcast thing to do, is it?
No.
Okay, so the similarities between two, I mean, I think Kukoc and it just shows that those guys were coming off the bench. It just shows the depth. It's like a microcosm of their depth is that, the Spurs' success is always having Ginobili off the bench and leading that second team. It's that stability, and 1 through, Warriors have talent 1 through 15 in my mind.
Right.
Every single person on that team has talent, and I believe in. Obviously, I believe in, the top 10 better than I do James Michael McAdoo.
Right.
But still, I mean, I think Michael McAdoo is talented. I still think he could be something eventually.
McAdoo can do some things.
So I think Iggy and Kukoc, it's just more of who they were as the sixth man is what led to their success.
Right.
I mean, of the team. It's just there are so many similarities like we've gone over.
Right.
But let's say they go 73-9. that would be amazing. Like, you'd want to party in the streets. But it's all for naught unless they win the championship.
Right.
If they go 73-9 and lose, it is a joke.
Well,
Like the 2001 Seattle Mariners. They won 116 games, but they lost in the first round. That's a joke.
It's true.
I look back at that as a joke. So the key thing is this. It's not just, it's a two-pronged approach. You got to win 73 and then win championship. But more than anything, it's championship or bust. I don't care if we go 71-11, lose on the last day as a heartbreaker, but then win the championship. I don't care at all. It's all about the championship.
Right.
So, on our last note, what team is going to be, besides the Spurs, we'll take the Spurs out of this, what team is going to be the toughest one to get through for this championship, in your mind?
Okay, so the teams that are going to pose some problems for the Warriors are going to be the Cavaliers, the Spurs, the Thunder, and the Clippers. And the Cavaliers, played us last year without $40 million worth of the roster. Kevin Love out and Kyrie Irving out. So with them, you have to at least respect what they can do. Can't imagine it would be a sweep by any means. The concern would be teams that have the size to win the free throw battle, get to the free throw line more often than the Warriors, slow the tempo down, win the rebounding battle, get more possessions than the Warriors, get more shots in the paint than the Warriors. And they'd also need a guard or two to match the scoring of what the Warriors are going to bring. And, the Clippers, certainly the Thunder, the Spurs, and the Cavs have those pieces that could do it.
But do they have
to play a hell of a series to make it happen? But in theory, it could happen for one of those four.
So, obviously, Spurs, in my mind, is going to be the toughest one. And, in my mind, we got not lucky last year, but it was good that we just got to a point where we didn't have to play them. I mean,
we got lucky avoiding them.
Yes, so
especially last year.
It's not going to happen this year. We're going to face them.
Oh, I sure
if
hope
we
so.
get to that point, if
if we don't play the Spurs, I will honestly feel a little cheated. Yeah. I want the Spurs.
We have to, and it's what everyone wants.
Greatest television of my life.
It's going to be really fun, and it's going to be like the championships of the Miami Heat and the Spurs just 3-4 years ago. It's going to be similar to that. It's going to go 7. It's going to go 6, most likely 7, and it's going to be an epic series. But my question is, what team is going to be the toughest? Let's say the Spurs do get knocked out, or who do I think, or who might knock us out before then? The one team that I'm the most afraid of, unfortunately, is the Clippers. I don't know why. It's just
right.
Maybe it's like because they're the last team to ever knock us out. Remember in 2014, they were the team that knocked us out.
Well, it really comes down to one thing. It comes down to Chris Paul. And
Yep.
Chris Paul is dumb enough and crazy enough to think he's the best player on the floor.
Yep.
And when we just saw it a week or two ago when they played, Chris Paul thinks he's the best player on the floor. Not only that, Doc Rivers thinks he is the best team on the floor. Is this true? Absolutely not. But they at least believe that.
Their rationality is
it's an irrational
scary.
confidence.
But look at last night. So the Clippers played the Thunder last night. And Thunder is a top 5 team, arguably top 3 team in the NBA. Thunder were up 22 and they lost. Clippers came back. It just shows that Clippers have it in them to be crazy good, but they also have it in them to give up 16 in the last quarter, lose to the Rockets, and then lose 2 more and get knocked out of the playoffs. So they're the incredible wild card. So I think the Clippers are going to be our toughest match. And if things all go to plan, we would hit them in the second round if they're the 4 seed.
Bring it on.
So
let's do it.
All right. So, I mean, this is an incredible time. And, we might look back at this podcast and laugh in 5 years. Like, oh, man, like Clippers were not even close. Or man, we didn't even get close to, winning 73 games that year. But only time will tell. But right now, it's an amazing time to be a Warrior fan. And
yeah, it's great. If only the Bulls and the Warriors could play head to head, that would be the ultimate.
What would Kerr do? Like
Kerr would have. Yeah, I guess old Luke Walton would fill in and coach up the Warriors. Not that the Warriors need a lot of coaching these days, but
this is true. This is true.
It's a different era. The hand check rule would be a whole different deal. It'd be really interesting with the pick and rolls. In theory, the Bulls could switch all the Warriors pick and rolls, which would be an advantage for the Bulls. And with the triangle, it's kind of a deal where you're trying to get the best matchup in certain spots, and the Warriors have so many 6'7", 6'8" good defenders. I don't know what matchup they'd go after. So it'd be a battle.
Okay,
without
so
a doubt.
we're ending on this. They play in a series. What happens in that
Well, I
series?
think it would obviously go 7 games, without a doubt. If it was played with the current rules, I think the Warriors would win. If it was played with the old rules where you get a hand check, all of a sudden we have, Jordan out there grabbing Curry's hip and all that stuff they used to do back in the day.
The hand check and
I
stuff.
think the Bulls would be able to win then.
Yep. Mine is, I think if they played in a 7-game first time, if they just played right now, never played each other, I think the Warriors would lose this first, maybe in 6 or 7. But I think they would learn from it and learn how to make the full adjustments for the next series, and the next time they'd play them, they'd beat them. So it's kind of a cop-out of an answer. But
yeah,
we both had cop-out of an answers. So that's a good way to end it.
I do think the Warriors are a little bit deeper. I think they are better 1 through 10 than that Bulls team. Obviously, in the playoffs, the rotation gets tighter, so I guess that would be a wash. But, I don't know. Steph
in
Curry,
the end, it would be worth anything to see Rodman and Draymond playing against each
that's
other.
what I would pay for. Right
More than Curry and Jordan. Rodman.
Curry, Jordan, whatever, yeah.
I would have bets on how many technicals per game just between those two.
Oh, without a doubt.
It would be insane. But
Could
too
you
bad we'll
imagine
never.
If Dennis Rodman had a Twitter.
He might. We should look that up. All right. Well, thanks for getting on this, Kyle. This
right,
is
it was a
awesome.
blast.
We'll have you on here again, and we'll go from there. But it'll be interesting this final stretch, and hopefully we win it.
Let's do it.
All right. Thanks, man.